In a recent video, I used Marmite to season some gravy, and I got quite a few comments saying, what is Marmite? Now, of course, you can just type those words into Google, you know, but I thought it'd be interesting today just to talk about what is Marmite, what does it taste like, and we'll just review Marmite. We're also going to review the low salt version and Marmite XO, which is a stronger version. And of course, no conversation about Marmite would be complete without talking about Vegemite and Bovril. So what is Marmite? Marmite is a yeast extract product. It's made from a waste product of the brewing industry. The yeast sludge that collects at the bottom of brewing vessels is sold off and it's processed into Marmite. So in a nutshell, this is a kind of waste disposal product, but it's also really tasty. It's often used as a substitute for some of those rich, meaty flavours that you get from browned meat. We're going to taste Marmite in various forms today, along with Vegemite. It's worth noting that in New Zealand, Marmite's made by a different company and looks different. It's in a jar that's more this shape, but, well, I'll put a picture on the screen. So you've got Marmite New Zealand, which is a different brand, but the same kind of idea. And then there are other products like Promite and all of the supermarket own brand variations, of course, and probably some others I haven't mentioned or can't think of. Anyway, what I'm going to do is go and get some toast and butter, and we're going to taste Marmite. Okay, now before we get into the tasting of each of the individual varieties of yeast extract, let's just talk a little bit about the flavour of yeast extract, the flavour of any yeast extract. What does it actually taste like? That's a difficult one to answer precisely because it is quite a unique flavour, but in general, it tastes extremely savoury. It tastes like, I could liken it to the savouriness of crispy bacon or crispy chicken skin or crispy toasted cheese. It's not the same as any of those things, but it's the same kind of savoury depth, if that makes any sense. So if you're thinking of the aroma and flavour of yeast in the context of baker's yeast or sourdough starter, it's not really like that at all. It's much more along the lines of the char on the outside of a steak, for example, than it is about yeast in its fresh form. And that's a lot to do with the processing. It's also a lot to do with the amount of salt that's in here. The salt is not just an ingredient, it's part of the process for extracting all of that flavour out of the yeast cells. The salt is used to burst those cells open during the cooking process, and that's where all the flavour comes from. It's really high in glutamates, so very much like soy sauce or, say, anchovies, it's that kind of intensity of flavour. Okay, we're going to dive straight into testing because this toast is still slightly warm, which is nice, and we'll talk about ingredients and stuff afterwards. Now, because Marmite is a vegan thing, I thought it might be interesting just to try this Flora rich and creamy alternative to dairy butter. It's a plant-based spread. It's a block. I've had this out of the fridge for a while. So I think we'll give this a try on the toast. Now, when you have Marmite on toast, I always think that you need a fair old bit of butter on there. So I'm just going to taste this stuff first to see what this is like. It does taste buttery. So anyway, let's crack on with the tests. So first things first, regular Marmite. This is the kind of mainstay version, and as you can tell, this jar's already been used. I already had this in the cupboard. The other jars I've bought for the purpose of this test. And so Marmite's this kind of sticky, stringy, tar-like substance. And I would say you spread about that much of it on toast, and this is where the butter comes in, because that butter helps to mitigate the saltiness of it. And so some people might like more than that, Some people might like just the very lightest scraping. That's about the right amount for me. So no major surprises there. That's the regular Marmite. Do you know what? I think I will compare Vegemite, because while we're here, this is the kind of direct competitor to this product. Let's compare Vegemite with Marmite. It's a slightly more pasty substance rather than sticky and tarry. It's more like a thick paste. Don't know if you can see that there. And I've taken too much. So let's give that a try. It spreads differently, definitely. It's more of a pasty spread, darker in colour than Marmite. Let's give it a taste. It's good. In fact, I would say it's a bit milder in flavour, a bit less salty perhaps than Marmite. So I'm going to try a big wodge of it here. Definitely a different flavour profile. It's got a kind of darker, toastier maltiness to it, which is quite nice. Honestly, I can't understand how people say that they love one of these things and hate the other. I can understand why you would love or hate the whole collection of things, but I can't understand why anybody would say that they like Marmite but hate Vegemite. They are sufficiently similar that really I don't get how you can have that finely defined a preference. Anyway, on with the show. And yeah, I'm getting crumbs on the butter. It's my butter, so deal with it. So next we're going to try the Marmite reduced salt version. Now this is actually my preference for keeping in the cupboard usually, if I can get it. Not because I'm scared of salt, but because if you have the reduced salt version, it means there's more of everything else. So there's more of the umami sort of flavour, and you can spread it thicker without overwhelming your palate with the salt. So I like to spread the reduced salt version quite a bit thicker. That's really good. Okay, now the Marmite XO, matured with a stronger taste. So it looks really similar to regular Marmite. Hard to see a real major difference there. So it's got this same toffee-like stringiness to it. Get a generous spread of that on there so we can give it a good taste. I can't actually tell a lot of difference between these two products. This one is more powerfully yeasty and umami flavour than the regular Marmite because it's got less salt. This one is more powerfully yeasty and umami, supposedly because it's extra old. But the overall effect is kind of the same. That's interesting. And then Bovril. Now Bovril is not normally used in the same way as Marmite. Bovril, people use it either to make gravy or they use it to make beef tea, which is like a bouillon that you drink from a cup. It's unusual, I think, to spread Bovril on toast, but I'm going to do it. Ooh, shouldn't have been tilting that jar, look at that. It's gone everywhere. So we can see that Bovril is very much more runny than Marmite. I'm going to spread it on toast to taste it, but yeah, this is not how it would normally be used. Darker than Marmite and kind of resembling the Vegemite in a way, but different consistency. Very similar kind of flavour, and we'll see why in a minute because the ingredients are quite similar. But yeah, there is that hint of meatiness in there because it is an animal product, this one. So which is my overall favourite out of this? I would say one or the other of these two. So the reduced salt or the XO. And they are very similar on the palate, which is really interesting. Perhaps I should have tried them with white bread because there could be something about this granary bread that's skewing the results. But to be honest, this is how I normally eat toast. My preference is granary bread anyway. So I ought to be testing it the way I like to eat it. Okay, so which one of these, or which one of all of them, including the own brands and variations not present here, is the best? Well, I have trouble with this idea because they're all quite similar, and actually I just don't find there to be a very good reason to be fiercely loyal to one variation of this idea. I like Marmite, and I like Vegemite. It's like I like raspberry jam and I like strawberry jam. Why would I need to choose one and then never eat the other? So, I'm going to finish my breakfast now, and then tidy up, and then we'll come back and look at ingredients and talk about the product in general. Okay, time now to talk about what is Marmite and the ingredients. So the ingredients for regular Marmite are yeast extract, which contains barley, wheat, oats and rye, salt, vegetable juice concentrate, vitamins, which is thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B12 and folic acid, natural flavourings, which contains celery. And I think we'll probably find, yeah, the ingredients on the other two are the same. Of course, the proportion of salt in this one will be lesser. And then Vegemite, we've got ingredients: yeast extract, which is from yeast grown on barley and wheat, salt, malt extract from barley, flavour enhancer, which is potassium chloride, colour, E150C, spice extract contains celery, niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, folic acid. Very similar set of ingredients. Different set of grains. So this is made from barley and wheat, whereas Marmite is made from barley, wheat, oats and rye. So that probably accounts more than anything else for the different flavour profiles of these yeast extract pastes. Bovril, of course, contains beef. So ingredients here are beef broth, 50%, yeast extract, right, okay, barley, wheat, oats, rye, salt, water, colour, which is ammonium caramel, cornstarch, beef powder, 1%, flavouring, which contains celery and flavour enhancers, lactic acid, may contain milk, egg, soy and mustard. So quite a different product actually, although interestingly Bovril went completely vegetarian at one point. When the BSE crisis was in play, Bovril was withdrawn from the market initially and then came back as a completely vegetarian recipe, which I think was just Marmite under a different branding. They are both made by Unilever. I don't think that's necessarily always been the case. They are both made by the same company, and that's why obviously they share a lot of design language. So two things left to talk about. One is the question, would I like Marmite? So for those of you watching this who've never tried Marmite and you're wondering if you might like it, well, if you like salty, savoury things, if you have ever scraped those sticky bits off the bottom of a roast chicken pan and eaten those, if you like soy sauce, I think you'll like Marmite because the flavour, although it's different and it's composed of different things, is similarly umami and salty. If you like those sort of salty umami combinations, I think you should give it a try. And if you're going to try it, my suggestion is crisp piece of toast, liberal spreading of butter, thin scraping of Marmite. Just start with a little bit. A mistake a lot of people make when they try this the first time is to put a great big dollop of it on their toast, or take a spoonful of it and try and eat a spoonful of it on its own. I don't recommend tasting it straight from the jar. Have it on a piece of toast with lashings of butter, and if you do like it, then it's the time to ramp up the amount and figure out what your level is for spreading it. One other tiny piece of atomic shrimp trivia is Marmite is related to one of my earliest memories. So I think I was about 2.5 years old, I was teething, and I was eating Marmite on toast for breakfast, and I was trying to tell my parents that the Marmite was making my teeth itch. Obviously I was only a couple of years old, so I couldn't really articulate the actual problem, because of course where my molar teeth were growing in, my gums were a little bit sensitive and the Marmite was irritating them. So I told my parents that Marmite was making my teeth itch, but that's one of my earliest memories. And finally, I suppose you're going to want to know which is best out of all of these. Which is best out of Marmite or Marmite XO or Vegemite or any of the others that we could have bought but haven't got here today. Out of the Marmite range, the reduced salt is my favourite, I think, not because I'm scared of salt, but because the reduced salt here means you can spread more of it on there without salt being the overwhelming flavour. And then you get more of that sort of meaty, umami, savoury flavour coming out then. I haven't tried Promite, I haven't tried any of the ones that are available abroad, apart from Vegemite, which I have had before. I've tried all of the different supermarket brands, and I find them acceptable too. A lot of people are really snobby about this and say it's got to be the brand, but honestly, I think they're all quite good in their own way, and often they're a little bit different. So sometimes if you get a supermarket brand, you'll get a different subtle blend of flavours than you would get from the real branded Marmite, and I think that's good to have variety. So I'm not afraid of buying the supermarket owned versions. It just happens now I'm going to have Marmite in my cupboard for the next few months, because this will take me a little while to get through. So there we go. I hope that has adequately answered the question, what is Marmite? Do feel free to ask me any other questions in the comments, and I'll see if I can answer them. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.